We're going to begin shortly. Let everybody enter. And in a few moments, we're going to begin. So I think we're all ready. So hello, everyone. And welcome to PNP Live. My name is Leah, and I'm a bookseller of politics and prose, and I have the pleasure of being your host today. Thank you so much for joining us and tuning in this virtual format, and it allows us to continue to bring amazing authors and their important books to readers like you. I am so excited to welcome our very special guests today, Laurie Halse Anderson and Leila del Duca, who are here to talk to you about their epic new thought-provoking incarnation of their iconic heroine, Wonder Woman. Of course, you can get your own copy. In a moment, we're going to drop the link in the chat box so you can get your own copy of Wonder Woman Tempest Tossed, which will also include signed book plates from Laurie. So thank you so much, Laurie. They're so beautiful. And also, if you have a question for our guest this evening, you can click on that Q&A button at the bottom of the screen and add one there. And at the end of the chat, our guests will have some time to answer your questions. And you can also vote on those questions that you like and really want answered. Of course, as always, please remember that this is a creative safe space, and we ask that friends be respectful of one another in their questions and comments. And of course, thank you all so much for your support. So now let's get on to the event you're all waiting for. For our first guest, it is my honor to welcome the extraordinary author and activist, Laurie Halse Anderson. Laurie's important work has aided readers of all ages in tackling tough topics with her insight, humor, and compassion. Along with her work for young readers, Laurie has written several critically acclaimed best-selling YA novels, including her National Book Award finalist, Speak, and her memoir in verse, Shout. In addition to her important literary contributions, Laurie continues to be a vocal advocate for such issues as intellectual freedom, diversity in publishing, and speaking or shouting out about sexual violence. And tonight, Laurie is joined by the amazing guests, our other amazing guest, comic book artist and writer, Leila del Duca. In addition to Leila's latest work with Wonder Woman, she has drawn the graphic novels Sleepless, Shudder, and Afar, which she also wrote. Her work on Shudder also earned her a nomination for the Russ Manning Newcomer Award. And Leila's beautiful art has also been included in comics such as Wicked and the Divine, Scarlet Witch, and American Vampire. So therefore, it's no surprise that tonight we're celebrating the release of Wonder Woman Tempest Tossed, this latest graphic novel written by these real-life Wonder Women. Along with Leila's epic and emotional illustrations, this new incarnation follows a young princess of the Amazons as she navigates adolescence, refugee experience, and taking an active stand against injustice. So thank you both so much, Laurie and Leila, for being here this evening and sharing your new book. So I pass the virtual stage over to you.
Thanks, Leah.
Yes, thank you.
We're here.
We are here.
Everybody who's joining us. This is wicked fun. So what I thought maybe I would do is I would talk a little bit about what I was trying to do with the structure of the story, but really the whole reason I'm here is because I want you to talk all about the art. and the choices, I think some process questions would be really, fun for people. I just want everybody to know from the beginning that Team Diana included us, but it also includes our colorist, Kelly Fitzgerald, and our letterer, Saida Temofonte. So we were Team Wonder Woman, and it was really fun to work together on this project. Does that sound good to you?
Yeah, I do want to clarify two things real fast, though. The colors was Kelly Fitzpatrick.
Oh gosh, Fitzpatrick, I messed that up. Thank you.
Yeah, and then also Afar that Leah mentioned wasn't drawn by me. It was just written by me.
Just written.
But a lot of people have said that our art styles look very similar. So I'm not.
That's cool. Yeah, that's very.
Anyway, yeah, that sounds.
Well, was there anything else that you wanted to clarify or tell people about before we dove in?
No, I think we can dive in now. I think.
All right, we're diving. There's some great shots in this book where there's one of my favorite. There's a couple scenes where she dives into water a couple different times. Mm-hmm. And those are really profound moments in the book. And those are a couple of the pages that I'm always tearing up on.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was really happy to draw those. I love, as you know, by this time, I love drawing nature things. So
Yeah, it shows.
the times where she dives into water was just really fun to study, like the bubbles and how
Right.
water moves, and just like imagining it was really fun. And here are some
Oh,
of
can you show that?
what one of the pages looks like without Kelly's colors on it.
Right.
And for those of you who don't know like comics process that much, most comic book artists who work traditionally usually work on this oversized 11 by 17 inch Bristol board paper. It's like thicker, and so ink doesn't bleed so much. But yeah, all of the art I did was in this traditional way.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. So let me talk about my vision of Diana. So DC Comics came to me a couple of years ago and said, you want to write Wonder Woman? And like, they didn't even get the sentence out of their mouth. It's like, yes, yes. Wonder Woman, very, very important influence on my life as a young girl and my vision of the kind of woman I wanted to become. And she gave me all kinds of permission that I really needed to have. And I had to audition, which I think is appropriate. I had to come up with a synopsis that passed muster, that they liked. And they said the rules were I didn't have to worry about continuity, thank goodness. But I had to write about Wonder Woman at age 16. I had to start her in Themyscira and then get her over into New York City. And the rest was the rest was fun. What was so fascinating for me was to think about growing up in a society where you were the first and only teenager. And I thought that would just be such a great metaphor and such an amplification of what everybody goes through in puberty and adolescence, where you're going like, what is going on with this body? And you might have some mood changes that are fairly dramatic and nobody understands you. And so that's how I started with my Diana. And then so things are happening on Themyscira, complications ensue. She winds up diving into the water to rescue some folks who are actually refugees trying to cross the Mediterranean to escape from war and terror. And she rescues them because she's Diana and she's awesome. But then she can't get back into Themyscira. And then things get really interesting. And one of the things that I love most about Leila's work is that, first of all, your vision of Themyscira, which is my happy place, especially now during the pandemic. You can just spend a lot of time looking at those spreads set in Themyscira, and it is so relaxing.
Thank you. I drew it like I would want to live there.
Yes.
And so I relate to you saying that so much.
Yes, you nailed it. You nailed it. In the first draft of it, before you saw it, I sent it in, and they liked my early Themyscira scenes, and they gave me permission to expand them a little bit, to put some more pages there. So the scenes when she's at the temple and the goddesses appear, those I got to stick in later. So that made me,
That's fantastic. Actually, one of my favorite pages to draw were those, especially the ones with the bowls of the offerings set out. Really cool. I'm so glad you got to fit that in.
Yeah, right. So and then so after she comes to New York, obviously that world feels very differently than Themyscira. And I'd love you to talk a little bit, Leila, about the choices you made to differentiate between the two worlds visually.
Yeah. So with Themyscira being really nature focused, so kind of a utopia, I kind of went crazy with the designs and the page layouts to kind of mimic the magic that I wanted readers to feel when reading that. And then once she went over to New York City, I wanted the page layouts and everything to be a little bit more stark and like drab and depressing. And it reminded me of when I moved from Montana to Denver, Colorado for art school, and how Montana was so nature focused that it was such a shock for me to like be in a cold city where like nature was less of a focus, which is funny now because like having more perspective on cities, like Denver is a very nature focused comparison. Yeah. But I was like, how would I feel if I was Deanna going there? And so I just kind of wanted to have the feel of the book be a little bit more depressing and drab because she is having a harder time there. And So yeah, that's what I was trying to go for with the contrast.
Nice. I loved it. I loved it. One of the things that I pulled on from my own experience when I was developing this character is that when I was 16, I don't think we talked about this. When I was 16, I was a foreign exchange student because I just needed to get away from my house because it was not good there. And I found a very safe way to do it because I'm kind of a coward. And I became a foreign exchange student. And I lived for 13 months in a different country. I lived in Denmark on a pig farm. I had to learn how to speak Danish. And so like her cultural stumblings were something that I lived through. But actually, when I went to college, I studied linguistics. So having a character who is omnilingual, the Amazons speak all languages.
Right.
That was super cool for me.
Yeah, I love that aspect. Linguistics has always been interesting, and I love that you put that skill in the story and had it very prominent.
Yeah. And the other thing I wanted you to really speak to is that I'm going to show you my Wonder Woman doll. My hair scrunchie is on her arm. So this is what I think I might look like on the inside, although I doubt I would wear quite this outfit. Like if she had sweats on, maybe, and I would be cold if I showed that much cleavage.
Yeah, not to mention you'd be like stabbing yourself if you bend over and all these things.
Right. How do you go to the bathroom in this? You know, I just don't even want to think about that. And it was really important for me that and you took it another step. I just so appreciated your artistic choices. Why don't you just explain why you drew her clothing, her outfits the way you did?
Yeah, I love that you brought that up. So the reason I gave her clothing the way I did was more like covered up and stuff like that, because I mean, I hate the sexualization of teenagers, especially in comics.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure that she was wearing like fashionable clothing, but also like not boring, I guess. So yeah, I went that direction. Like I guess, yeah, I guess like another thing that I really appreciated about what you did with the script is that you had such a realistic take on a superhero, whereas like another critique I have against superhero comics is that they solve a lot of things with punching and kicking and like yelling at each other, but this was a much more realistic take and it was more believable for me, therefore I was more emotionally invested.
Nice.
And so yeah, and I absolutely wanted to reflect that with the clothing too and have a more realistic take on that as well. So even though like women are working out and being active in Themyscira, I used a lot of clothing designs from ancient Greece, and a lot of that wasn't like scantily clad stuff. So I was happy to use that as an inspiration. A lot of flowy stuff because it's like breezy and warm there, you know. Yeah. And then when she gets not thrown out of Themyscira, but when she can't go back and she has to live the refugee experience, she is accepting clothing that people are giving to her. And so a lot of that isn't like high fashion or anything. It's just very like day-to-day clothing that I imagine people getting from Target or Walmart or something like that, more affordable and also have been given away. So she has a much more like, I guess, drab, less stylistically interesting clothing in New York City because of that.
Right. I you know, and that also ties into the fact that I also did not want to sexualize her. Yeah. I mean, this is one of my beefs with the comics industry is that women are always sexualized, and it's like, when are you going to put a guy in a codpiece? Yeah. and come talk to me then about seeing cleavage.
Yeah.
And I actually don't want to see a guy in a codpiece, but
yeah.
But I wanted her to be, you know, this is part of why I love writing for teenagers, is because, first of all, I have really clear memories of some of my emotional stuff when I was a teenager. And one of the things that was strongest for me, aside from being pretty angry at everybody, I was really confused. I was so confused because I was coming of age, some crappy things that happened to me and to my family. And I was beginning to really see the hypocrisy. And I think that is the strength of adolescence. And it terrifies adults because they see adults who have, what's the word? They've they've kind of bowed down to the power structure and they've stopped fighting. And
Yeah.
teenagers show up and they're like, well, that's wrong. That's not going to work. And I really wanted that to be the central part of who her character was, kind of her equal parts, fighting for justice with compassion at the same time. And I didn't want her to have a love interest, because I wanted her to get to know herself, you know, and she has to work on, she has to learn how to be a friend with somebody who's her own age. And that's a new thing for her. And I've never really been super fond of Steve Trevor. So in my version of Wonder Woman, we have Steve and Trevor, and they are married together. They're husbands, and they work for the United Nations. And so that allowed her to have all these allies, these people that she's learning how to be in relationships with, people who are very different from her, and at the same time, getting to know herself. And it's hard to do that when you're dressed like this.
So accurate.
Yeah. So I just want to, holding in on the immigrant, because I've got another question about your artistic choices. I did worry a little bit. I tried to be really humble about the fact, and a little scared about the fact, that I was following in the footsteps of incredible creators over 80 years. And this is a cherished character in our world. And so I really wanted to respect what came before me, and then tried to bring my take on it. And so there's a couple of Easter eggs in the book. Hanky, so when she comes to New York, Steve and Trevor know an elderly woman who's retired now, used to work for them in the United Nations. And she's sort of like this nice grandmotherly figure. And her granddaughter is the girl who becomes Diana's new friend. But her name is a Polish name, but if you translated that name into English, it means Etta Candy. Did you know that? Yeah.
But that's so cool. And that was her sidekick back in the early days, right?
Yes.
That's
and then I had, because, you know, I love the American dream, right? And I think it's just a dream for most people. But it's a dream that has brought millions of brilliant, brave immigrants to this country, right? And it's a dream that has somehow survived genocides and 400 years of chattel slavery for those families who were involved in that. And everybody, I think this moment's really important, because we're finally getting to a point where you can't not see, right? You can't not see what we are versus what we said we were.
Yeah.
And the difference between what we tell ourselves, the lies we tell ourselves about our history and our vision, it's almost like we're all becoming teenagers again, and looking at the grown-ups who've been holding the power structures in their greedy little hands, and saying, you guys are lying. You're really horrible, and people are in pain, and kids are hungry. And so this is a great time to be writing about these kinds of issues. And something that has struck me since the book came out last month is I'm seeing my own story through a different lens. And I'm seeing that Diana comes from a place of profound privilege, not necessarily because she's a princess, but because she's grown up in safety.
Yeah.
She's never known hunger. She's never seen hunger. She's never known, you know, that kind of, you know, the fear that so many families have of, oh, my parents just lost their jobs, you know, or somebody's sick and we can't, you know, all the things that so many of our families have to deal with. And so her journey is as also a journey that I think there's a lot of teenagers in America right now are taking, from privilege into understanding. Nothing wrong with coming from privilege. That's where you came from. But if you really love all of us as brothers and sisters and siblings, and we're trying to make this a country for everybody with equity and inclusion and equal justice and opportunities, then those of us who were born into privilege, like look at white girl here, we have an opportunity, and I feel a responsibility to use that for the greater good. And I think that's part of Diana's journey too.
Absolutely. That was very well said. And I mean, that's truly another reason I connected with the book so much, is that, yeah, you just pulled out all of the feelings that I felt as a teenager as well. Just seeing injustices and being like, no, but why? Like, why are you doing this, adult? Like, don't you know?
Right.
And you're right. I think we are going through this collective thing that definitely makes me feel like I am a teenager again, like never ignoring it, but being like, oh, it's even worse than I initially felt as a teen. It's even worse. So
yeah, that's a good point. There's a scene, one of the, there's some very dark things in this book, but just because this is the way life is, there's also some lighter moments where I was trying to give everybody, including the artist and the writer, a break emotionally. And in one of them, you want to talk about the polka scene where and the costume choices that you made?
Yeah, thank you for writing that, because it was really fun to draw those costumes and research them, and they're so colorful. Let me see if I can dig out some of the pages, but yeah, it was really nice and refreshing to draw something so joyful for Diana after all the crap she went through so far, and then also the interactions between Risa, who is being very teenagery and like looking at her phone and like, I hate doing anything old people do about it. It was just really, really fun to do, and it was a welcome break. I don't know if you guys
so they're in like a Polish social club in Queens, and they're traditional Polish dances and costumes, and Diana really digs it and Raisa doesn't, but you did such a great job both with the emotions and the flow of traditional costumes. That was super cool. What were your favorite spreads or panels to play with?
I think I have them as well. I think this one was one of my favorite pages because I love the movement of the horse through this cool scenery, and then like the flashbacks or not flashbacks, but the potential flash forwards of her being like, I'm going through puberty and I don't know what's happening to me. Maybe I'll just like be cleaning out toilets for the rest of my life because I'm useless. And so, and then I really loved the double page spread where she walks into her birthday or born day.
Oh yeah, let me see if I can find that real quick. That was, you blew me away. So the book opens on Diana's 16th birthday. They call it a born day. And there's a double page spread where she's kind of screwed up. She got in trouble, and she thought she was going to be really in trouble. And then everybody shows up for her. And there's this great party. If you ever wanted to have a party, you want to have it on this island. No social distancing whatsoever.
No social distancing, tons of fresh food, like really cool ladies with amazing costumes.
Something like
that. And then
what else do you have?
Oh, I think that I'm trying to think. I love the scenes where she finally went to a park for the first time in New York, and she was happy again and being like, this is so great. Like, all of horrible like building stuff. Like, this is great. Yeah, that was fun too.
One of my favorite things that you drew was, so Diana, when she gets to New York City, she's living in Queens. And so she is stunned, shocked, horrified when she encounters a homeless woman sleeping on the sidewalk, when she encounters piles of garbage, when she's learning really fast that there are children who don't have lunch and sometimes breakfast and occasionally dinner. And she's just like baffled by all this. And I also put in a scene, because I'm me, about the first time she gets catcalled. Street harassment. And this is sort of my fantasy. Do you have that one?
Let me find it. But yeah, that was so fun to draw too.
I thought I understood how I wanted that to look. And when I saw what you did with it, I was like, oh, she nailed it.
Oh, awesome. Where are you? Oh no, I might not be able to find it.
That's okay.
Oh no, I got it. Okay.
Oh, you're the best.
Or at least the sequence. Okay, so here's the page.
Okay, so there's the guys who are whistling at her, and then you see her face, and then she just jacks them up against the wall.
Yeah.
And then they run away.
Yeah, as someone who has many a time envisioned that same exact fantasy at catcallers, it was really cool to draw.
Yes, it's kind of therapeutic. I'm so glad you did that.
Yeah.
Was there anything I mean, you're a pro. How many years have you been doing this?
Over a decade. Yeah, professionally, and like I was able to quit my day job to work in comics full time. I think it's been 8 years, but I've over a decade been drawing comics.
Congratulations, that's a lot of work.
Thank you.
But I don't understand the artistic process at all, so I'm just going to ask the questions that I want to find the answers to.
Yeah.
Do you get surprised when you're drawing that things maybe sometimes go in a slightly different direction than you had considered? Like, what is that like?
It's so satisfying because I'm usually surprised at either my skill level has jumped enough so that I can illustrate this thing exactly how I imagined it in my head.
Right.
It's very rarely surprised at like, oh, how crappily I drew this. So yeah, like this, it doesn't happen that often anymore because I do have like my process streamlined pretty well now. But when it does happen, it's like some of the most satisfying moments in my work days when I'm surprised at my skill and like really proud of myself.
Good for you.
Thanks.
And what is it like for you after the colorist does her job? And then you see, what does that feel like?
It's usually always really cool. Like with Kelly's stuff, I was always like, wow, this is so great. I mean, sometimes there's colorists that kind of shock me with how different it looks after I've drawn it for so long. Because when I draw, I envision it with certain colors or like an emotion or whatever. So even though the colorist is doing an amazing job sometimes, it's still a little bit of a shock. But then after I get used to it, it's like, oh, it's like they've elevated me again, like to the level that I could never do by myself.
Can you explain for our audience why in traditional comics and these graphic novel series, there is such a thing as a colorist, as such a person? Because in traditional publishing, that's different.
Yeah, like with authors like you're a one-person team. Minus like editors, I'm assuming.
Yeah, there are definitely editors, sadly.
Okay, cool. So the reason that comics are such a team effort is because they take forever to make. And so back when they first started being made, there was usually a writer and then someone to draw it and then someone to color it, someone to letter it, so that it would be produced faster.
Yeah.
Now there's a lot of one-person teams for comics, but if you're doing stuff like monthlies, you especially really probably need a team. There's no way you can do like 16 to 22 pages alone every month unless you're like super fast. And I know it can be done, but it's hard. So I think, I'm not sure why they're doing that with the graphic novel line. It might also be for speed because it does take a while to get a whole graphic novel done. And then also I'm only like the line artist. I do the layouts and the pencils and inks, but then after that, I don't have very good coloring skills. Like I can color if I want to, but I don't want to, and I don't have as much skill as like Kelly has.
Kelly does, yeah.
Same with lettering. I have no idea how to start lettering professionally.
That's
like I can pass by with it, but it's just not at a level that Zaida did.
The Speak graphic novel was illustrated by Emily Carroll, a Canadian artist, and she had to do everything. And it took, she did a great job, but man, it did, and they all knew, and she hit her deadline and they knew how long it was going to take, but this moved much faster.
Yeah.
So that was good. Excellent. I think we're there's some questions pouring in here. Is Leah still there?
Oh yeah, it is about that time.
I know, look at how fast that went, right? I told you.
So fast.
So I guess we'll start our question and answer from the audience, but thank you so much, Laurie and Leila. That was amazing. Thank you for sharing all these great insights about this awesome book. So I guess we'll take our first question. There's still time to add more questions or vote on the ones you like. So our first one is going to come from Janet, and Janet asks, Laurie, in what ways was it different for you to write a new story, even though it is based on a well-known character, for a graphic novel versus writing Speak as a graphic novel?
Oh, I'm really glad you asked that question. I'm just so grateful I had the opportunity. I feel that between the Speak graphic novel, my memoir in poetry, Shout, and then this project, the last couple of years have been so filled with opportunities for me to grow as a creative person. And it's just like giving me a whole other wind, and that's super cool. Because I'm really glad I had the experience with the speak graphic novel, because that made me think about panels and action and making sure that you're not just having the same talking heads moments over and over again. I actually avoided looking and reading comic books or graphic novels while I was researching and working on this. And I didn't see the Wonder Woman movie until everything was turned in. All of my stuff was turned in. And that's the way I write novels too. If I'm working on a YA novel, I won't look at YA books for a couple of years because I want all the voices in my head to be mine. And so I actually think that writing graphic novel scripts is improving my writer's skill, because it's making me think a lot more, because I'm very good at being in people's characters' heads. Like I can do narrative and dialogue all day long, but people are just sitting around, right? And that's boring. And with a graphic novel, you want to set it up. It's like, I feel like the writer of a graphic novel is the pitcher, and our job is to pitch up slow, fat softballs, and then the artist just bam, hits it right out of the park. Because if you set up the story structure is more important, because if I set up the story structure properly, then there are moments when there is no dialogue, or it's just a word or two, because the art and the action of the characters is carrying the strength of the story forward. So I think I answered your question. It's very different and deliciously fun to do.
You guys were such a great duo for this one, so thank you.
Thank you.
So our next question comes from Ashley. Ashley asks, and this is for both of you, will you write more Wonder Woman books?
I think I know which Ashley this is, because she told me she was going to show up. I hope, Ashley, I hope you don't mind, but I'm just gonna say, I have to tell you the World and Ashley story, because Ashley's a grown-up person. She's a grown-up woman. She's a writer. She's in her 30s. She's a master's degree, and I've known her since she was in 2nd grade. And when I started out many, many years ago writing picture books, I got to go and visit her elementary school. And it's just been a joy to kind of stay in touch with her and watch her develop and grow over time. So are we going to do another one? I'm actually working on another Wonder Woman project. I'm being the midwife for the first time in my life. I'm going to edit I am editing, I'm in the middle of it, editing an anthology of real life Wonder Women. Women and girls who have changed the world by things that they've done. And we have a whole scope of artists and writers who are on the project. So everyone's writing a small little snippet. The whole, what's the word? The whole array, the whole list of the contributors will come out next month during DC Fandom. I think that's August 22nd. So that's kind of keeping me in the Wonder Woman world, and I really hope they let us do another one. I'd be up for it. Yeah.
Me too. It'd be so rad.
Call all your librarians. Make sure your librarians order this book, and then they'll tell us to come back.
Yeah, yeah.
So outside of maybe another one of these, do you have any upcoming work as well, Leila?
What are you doing?
Yeah, I'm working on a 5-issue miniseries that hasn't been announced yet, so I can't say anything about it other than I think I can say that it's kind of like a supernatural murder mystery. Yeah. Yeah, so that's been pretty fun. Other than that, I'm writing the sequel to Afar with the hopes that we can fund it hopefully on Kickstarter later this year. But we're also just like juggling whether or not we want to look for a book publisher that can give us an advance, because if you're familiar with Image Comics, they're creator owned, and so it's a lot of back end pay with them instead of getting an advance like book regular stuff. Yeah.
So if people wanted to follow along and find out all these details, is Instagram the best platform to follow you on?
I would say it is. I do update mostly there.
Can you show your beautiful art?
Yes, and I can easily show the art. Yeah. But I do always update my Twitter with important things. Okay. And if I do have a Kickstarter, it'll be on my Twitter, Instagram, my website. I do have a Patreon. And also now I'm running my studio's YouTube channel.
Oh, geez. So, wow.
Yeah. If you follow me anywhere, you will hear about it. If
Nice. Very, very good. I'm actually, along with the anthology that I'm editing, I'm beginning to work on the graphic novel adaptation of my Seeds of America trilogy about the American Revolution. And I can't tell you who we lined up for art for that, but it's going to be awesome.
Yay, that's very exciting.
Yeah, but it's also going to be a little bit slower because it's traditional publishing, and I think they're only going to have, like, they're going to make the poor artists do all that heavy lifting.
Wow.
So
Okay.
stay tuned.
Thank you so much, guys, for sharing your sneak peeks. I think we have time for a few more, so I'm going to take another question. Next one is from Tanushka, and Tanushka asks, and this is for both of you, was it hard for you to remake a character that already exists without the fear of recreating or copying other existing versions of Wonder Woman?
I'll go first.
Yeah.
I would say it wasn't hard for me at all because Laurie painted such a different picture of her that it wasn't difficult at all. And I think when I tried out for this as well, they gave me a different picture of Diana, which was draw an athletic version of 16-year-old Diana, maybe doing parkour things, because it was going to be involved in the book. And so yeah, like that, they didn't ask me to draw her in her costume. Oh wait, no, they did. I did draw a different version of her costume that she never wore.
Ah.
I did, yeah, and I don't think I have it in this stack, unfortunately. That would have been perfect to show here. But yeah, I think for the most part, it was an easy thing to imagine for me, having a more, like, again, grounded and less like sexualized version of Deanna.
Right.
And as you will see everywhere else, she has scantily clad stuff or very tight fitting everything. And yeah, so it's not hard to deviate from that if you just give her
just
like
put some clothes on her.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think our version of Diana is not going to put up with that uniform, that costume. She's going to be like, "Are you kidding me?"
Yeah.
You wear it. Let's see how you like it.
Yeah.
For me, I alluded to this a little bit earlier. I thought that if I stayed true to her character, right, compassion and justice, that's who she is. And when her sense of injustice is triggered, she's capable of literally moving the earth in defense of the vulnerable, the oppressed. And I thought that as long as I stayed true to those characteristics, then I would be honoring the character that has been envisioned by others.
Thank you. Yeah, I really love this incarnation. She's just so relatable and just awesome. I would love to be her friend if I was a teen too. So our next one comes from Tammy. And Tammy asks, were you concerned about taking Wonder Woman down a culturally relevant path in dealing with immigration, for example, as opposed to a regular rock'em sock'em storyline?
No, I actually said that's who I am, right? If they're going to hire me, they know what they were getting, and that's the only way I know how to tell stories is reflections of the world that we're all in. As a reader, I really love reading the kind of books that have one foot in the real world and one foot in the world of mythology. What's it? Kelly Link does incredible short stories like that. Neil Gaiman has some stuff that does it. David, what's his name? Did the Clocks. So the stories that kind of weave back and forth between reality and the myth. Mythology is a very rich source of creativity for me, and I think you're going to be seeing more of that moving ahead.
I do want to add that, and I don't think I've told you this yet, Laurie, but I think another reason I really love this book and I love your style, and I'm so happy and honored to be part of this book, is because being a comic book creator seems like a really selfish thing to do as a human being. Like, you're not contributing like an engineer does, or you're not contributing like a medical person does. And so because of the activist message of this book, I felt like I contributed something a little bit more meaningful. I know that like entertaining people with fantasy and sci-fi is also important, but it was just kind of really refreshing and kind of eased my conscience a little bit to be part of this.
I'm really glad to hear that. And I think it's important for us to recognize that all of this is possible, right? It's possible to read and create something that's entertaining. It's possible. You can do that in the movies or you know, going to Hamilton, watching Hamilton on Disney, whatever. At the same time, you're growing and learning. And the art that I love best, which makes me smile, makes me cry, makes me reflect. And it'll help me move myself to that next place in terms of my growth as a human being. And it causes me to reevaluate. And I really wanted to do that in this book. I really wanted this book to be a mirror of part of our experience in the United States. And I wanted to recognize that we all have superhuman powers. And we're always going to be scared when we call on them. And that integrity demands it of us. And so, yeah, you made a huge contribution, buddy.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah, thank you both so much. And that end is like, it kind of made me tear up. So those who haven't read it yet, you'll see. So yeah. And then listing the naturalization thing at the end. So I think we have time to take another one. So our next question is a nice segue. So this one's from Lynn. And Lynn asks, what do you want our young adolescent readers to take away from reading your Wonder Woman as opposed to other versions of Wonder Woman?
First of all, I hesitate to be prescriptive that way because I think everyone will find what they need in a story if it speaks to them. Not all stories speak to all people, right? And there's a book that, like, there's been a lot of books I've read in the last couple of years that I tried to read 20 and 30 years ago, and that just wasn't the book for me at that place. For those for those younger readers who feel connected to the story, right? Who are jazzed by it and who kind of are drawn into it, I hope it leads them to ask questions. I hope that we have resources at the back of the book, and I think in the chat they had the resources too of some places for readers to go if they want information about refugees, about how you can help make lives better for people, about human trafficking issues, because that's a part of this book as well. And so the best stories let you kind of go within and go, oh, yeah, I relate to that, and well, she did that, maybe I can try something like that. But also to take that integrity and that compassion, that fight for justice, and find your place to do that in the world.
Yeah, well said, Laurie. That's basically what I was gonna say.
Can you put an artist spin on it though? Because
oh, right. I guess, like with any of my books, I hope that people walk away, or teens walk away with, I don't know, inspiration. Because that's usually what I walked away with when I read a really great comic book, or if I just looked at really cool illustrations. I just felt bliss in being able to escape and imagine this other world. And like, one of the best things about comics is that the reader is the last collaborator, and they're filling in the blanks between panel to panel and like envisioning what happens before, after, and in between. And, or like even just putting voices to, like, the sound of a voice to dialogue. And I have
to write that down, so just keep going.
So yeah, I just hope they walk away with having had a good time and being inspired to create or do whatever it is they like doing best in real life. And yeah.
That's really good. The reader is the last collaborator. Can I quote you on that?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
You're done.
I'm not the first to say that, just knowing.
First time I heard it.
Okay, cool.
New to me. Do we have time for another one?
I think we might be out. Well, I think we can take one more.
Okay.
So we'll take one more. Last one is going to be from Margaret. And Margaret asks, did you collaborate throughout the creation of the book, or was the script the first, or the art one, and then the art? So
I wrote the script, and then once, did you get the whole script at once, Leila, or did they give it to you in chunks?
I think it was chunks, half and half. Okay. Yeah, first 80 pages, last 80 pages.
Yeah. And we never communicated directly. But I should go back and look at the notes. But I would have some comments about drawings, and she had some really smart comments about, you don't need all those words in that panel. I think that's a big mistake that writers make, is because we have all the words, and learning how to structure the story so that the art carries that is a good thing.
Yeah, it's almost a pity that everyone doesn't get to read your script, because you did so much world building and like backstory and everything like that, and like not enough where I was like overwhelmed by it. Like I still knew what to put in there, but it almost, like I almost wish that there would be a novelization of this, because of how rich you described everything, and no one else gets to see that except for me. So I feel really honored at the same time.
Did they send you the links, the reference images, the links to the reference? I made a whole private Pinterest board.
Yes, they did. That helped me so much. Okay. Thank you. Yeah, that was great.
So yeah. that was sort of, so we were collaborating from a distance.
Yeah, collaborating from a distance, but having like editors as a middleman.
Yeah.
For us, which was odd for me, because I'm usually used to talking to my collaborators one-on-one.
Really?
But I also understand why editors are the middleman for things as well. So I think there's like pros and cons to both methods.
Yeah. I mean, it worked well.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah. Interesting. Thank you for sharing that. So I think that's all the time we have for questions. One thing I always love to end with, though, is sharing, maybe each of you, what you're reading now.
Oh, what am I reading now? Oh, yeah. I am reading, if I can read it from here.
I'm going to grab my book while she talks.
Okay. I'm reading Persepolis Rising. Yeah, which is by James S.A. Corey. It's, I think, the 7th book in the Expanse series, and that's been really great. It's also kind of like triggering right now, because they're like, it's about, in this, well, never mind. I don't want to ruin anything for people who haven't read the series yet. It's really good, though.
Thank you. And
this book, City We Became by N.K. Jemisin, this is the kind of things that I was talking about, that where you have one foot in the real world and one foot in mythology, blowing me out of the water. I love her. And then next up on the to be read pile is George Johnson's All Boys Aren't Blue. So this has been a good summer for reading, and I have Mary Trump's book on order for my local independent bookseller.
Thank you so much for sharing. That was amazing. And thank everybody for contributing your questions. So many thanks to Laurie and Leila for joining us this evening and sharing their words and their insights about this awesome graphic novel. And of course, thank you all so much, viewers, for joining us today. Don't forget, you can still click that link in the chat box to get your own copy of this amazing graphic novel.
When we have book plates too, signed book plates.
Yeah. So you can get your own copy of Wonder Woman Tempest Tossed, and it will be, as Laurie said, included these beautiful book plates
that have Leila's gorgeous art on
them. Yes, oh, they're like beautiful.
Yeah.
So while supplies last, if you get one, they'll be included. And of course, if you want to find out about more upcoming events, check out our website as well as our social media. We'll drop that information also in the chat box as well. And thank you so much again for joining us. I hope you all keep reading widely and expanding your world, and you stay safe. So thank you so much, everyone, for coming.
See you later. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.